this evening finds you all in good health, good energy, and of course we have a great program for you this evening. I look forward to, as I always do, an interview this evening. We're going to have a chat with Dr. Bernie Siegel, and we've had Bernie on the program several times over the years, and very interesting program that we bring you this evening with Bernie. And we're going to talk a little bit about an upcoming presentation that he will be giving at the Cape and Islands Wellness Expo. And of course, the Cape and Islands Wellness Expo will take place March 8th and 9th at the Resort and Conference Center at Hyannis. Many of you may remember that as the 4 Points by Sheraton Hyannis Resort. Anyway, this should be a remarkable event, and the Cape and Islands Healing Arts magazine brings this wealth and resource of brilliance together through the Cape and Islands Wellness Expo to offer to the general community at large. That would be all you out there. So in the event that you have an open schedule on the 8th and 9th of March, you can take in the event at the Cape and Islands Wellness Expo that is presented, as we said, by Cape Healing Arts Magazine. And it should be a wonderful, wonderful event. Of course, anytime you listen to Bernie Siegel speak, it's a remarkable event. He will be the keynote speaker. He's going to speak on the art of healing Saturday at 2 p.m., and tickets are, of course, on sale now. If you are interested in hearing Bernie speak, other than this evening, of course, here on the radio show, you can actually log on to capeexpo.com, or you can call them at 508-896-7117. Once again, 508-896-7117. And that's for Cape and Islands Wellness Expo. And if you've never heard Bernie speak, let me tell you, it is a remarkable experience. So we're going to speak with him in just a few. But, of course, Catherine Foley's here from Jarl. Welcome.
Good evening.
How are you? Larry, where are you, Larry?
I'm doing well. Did he run away?
Yeah, no, he ran away, and we need some help with that mic. Want to just hold on? Actually, why don't you just chase right out there? Bill, we need a little mic pot there. Try it again.
Hello.
Now we're cooking. Much better when they can hear you at home.
Larry keeps running away.
Yeah, Larry keeps disappearing on us. That spaceship came and took him for another little quick cruise. The power of Kanika, ubiquinol.
Yeah. Ubiquinol, our CoQ10. We are getting really amazing press on our new form of CoQ10. Lots of clinical evidence about the benefits of CoQ10. Just some of the issues have been absorption. And with our new form of CoQ10, it's a reduced form of CoQ10. It's bioavailable. So, the clinical results that we're seeing now, that the bioavailability is so good, are really, really impressive. And we just put together a book about the health benefits of CoQ10 in the history. We did this with the help of Dr. Gianpaolo Lattaro, who in 1972 with Dr. Carl Folkers documented the structure of CoQ10 and its metabolism and role in the body. And so it's the evolution of CoQ10. We're starting to see how important it is for cholesterol protection against oxidation of LDL cholesterol and cardiovascular disease. We're seeing health benefits for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and lots of good stuff. And, there's even some research about the use of CoQ10 for bronchial asthmatics and all of this stuff. So
fantastic. And, of course, 71 million Americans are presently afflicted with some form of heart disease.
71 million.
71 million. So, I mean, people think of heart disease as merely old people who have weak hearts. Right. It's so much more complex than that. Yeah. There's so many different varied forms of heart disease, but it's been estimated that 71 million Americans presently have some form of heart disease, many of them undiagnosed.
Oh, and this is the thing. One of my old professors, one of the greatest things he ever said was, he was giving a lecture and he threw up a slide and he said, the first sign of cardiovascular disease is a heart attack. And he's very right. So a lot of us are walking around there with some, stuff going on that we don't know about. And so CoQ10 is one of those things that's great for energy, great for cardiovascular.
Yes, indeed, and making it an awful lot easier for the heart to gain access to the precious oxygen that it needs.
Yeah.
And to me, heart disease really ultimately at the mechanical level distills down to the reality that the heart is simply not getting enough oxygen.
Yeah, that's it. And when your heart gets good oxygen, it has great energy levels. What is going to happen is that you'll find that your resting heart rate goes down, which is good, and that your energy is still there. And there's a real focus on energy drinks in our society and and stuff like this. And what it does is it speeds your heart rate up like crazy. And in Chinese medicine and a lot of Asian philosophy, they say that the heart is the center of life, and you're born with a predetermined number of heartbeats. And so that's where a lot of meditation practice comes in, slowing the heart rate down.
So don't rush it.
Yeah, extending life. And a nutrient like CoQ10 can give you energy, vitality.
Without speeding up your heart.
Yeah, and this is very important.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. So many folks are thinking in terms of getting up in the morning, and they have a hard time wiping the sleep out of their eyes. And their antidote for getting, all fired up and getting through the day in the face of all that fatigue and those Monday morning blues is to have a couple cups of coffee. Well, then you're talking about, 125 milligrams of caffeine per cup. It's a drug, it's a stimulant, and it jacks up your heart rate, like you say, and it uses up those precious heartbeats.
Yeah.
The objective is to increase the energy and not speed up the heart rate.
It's so hard to attain, and a lot of people struggle with that. How do I keep my energy up without feeling like I need a shot of coffee or, something like this. So.
Well, and CoQ10 is really one of those places, or ubiquinol is one of those places really where people, I think, have that opportunity to supplement their body in such a way that they increase the availability and the delivery of oxygen to the heart, the energy in the heart, without speeding it up.
And the brain, too.
Absolutely right. So talk to us about Jarrow's formula with regards to CoQ10.
Well, we have ubiquinol, which is the reduced form of CoQ10. It's made by Konica in Japan. They're considered the world leading manufacturer of CoQ10. It's really the Cadillac of CoQ10s. And we did the formulation with Dr. Lattaro. I mean, Dr. Lattaro is a Nobel Prize winning scientist, and he helped us with the absorption of CoQ10. So not only do we have ubiquinol, which has an 80% absorption rate, we have we put it in a base of fatty acids because CoQ10 is a fat-soluble vitamin. So the fatty acid base even further facilitates better absorption.
Right. So in terms of dose, in other words, a lot of folks are probably sitting at home right now making notes and saying, well, what's a reasonable dose? And when I purchase the Jarrow ubiquinol, what should I do? And what's the dosage on there? How many milligrams per capsule, et cetera?
We have two potencies now. We have a 30 milligram and a 100 milligram. 100 milligram 3 times a day, that's 300 milligrams a day. That is for somebody that is on a statin or they have had some cardiac event. When you have a cardiac event, you have a heart attack or a stroke or something, a part of the tissue in the muscle, the heart muscle, dies, basically. So you lose that capacity for energy. So you have to make it up with things like CoQ10. And so 300 milligrams a day, that's typically the protocol for somebody that has cardiac issues. 30 milligrams a day is a good dose for people that are just looking to add a good supplement to their diet.
What about those folks who maybe have already had a cardiac event and they're looking to really make up the difference? Same dose? 300. 300. So that's quite a varied swing between 30 milligrams for those folks who are simply looking to supplement their diet with CoQ10 versus those folks who've had a cardiac event, 300, 10 times. Yeah, and the protocol, Dr. Sinatra, his protocol is really well clinically documented. It's CoQ10
ribose and carnitine for people that have had a cardio event, or they have some sort of, cholesterol issues or what have you, or they're on statins. And
should be on GPLC.
Yeah, well, that's the carnitine he recommends.
Is it really? Yeah. Great stuff.
It's really good stuff. And then, 30 milligrams is a good way to start off, and then see where you are. Now, as we age, our Q levels drop dramatically. Tissue saturation in lung tissue drops about by 40%.
Wow.
Starting at age 42, 43. In the liver, it drops about 35%. And in the heart, it drops about typically like 40% as well. So we see tissue saturations just as a byproduct of aging drop off significantly. So it's also one of those anti-aging supplements.
Well, it's one of those supplements, there's so many of them, unfortunately, that as we age, diminishing returns, and we have to make up the difference because some of these agents are really vital.
Yeah.
And things like CoQ10 and things like DHEA, for example, and pregnenolone, so many of these are so precious and so very important for our immune system, et cetera. And as we age, we have to replenish, replace this. And the more stress we're under, and the diets that we eat, the poor foods that we consume, all really play a significant role at knocking these levels down. Yeah. So, real important to supplement with CoQ10.
And one of the things is a lot of those pregnenolone, DHEA, a lot of the base molecules for your body to build those, it comes from cholesterol. So as we age, our cholesterol metabolism goes down, and that's why having something like CoQ10 is really important, because it keeps the metabolism of the good cholesterol, HDL cholesterol, up, and protects your body against oxidation from the bad cholesterol.
Right.
As your metabolism goes down, you have more circulating cholesterol that's not utilized. So
very important information, Catherine. Thank you so much. Can you stick around and chat with Bernie Siegel with us?
Oh my God, it would be a pleasure.
Great. Okay. Well, anyway, folks, those of you who were just tuning in, you're in for a special treat this evening, because we have a Bernie Siegel coming on to chat with us about the recent research on the effects of loneliness and stress and how they affect genes and immune response. So we'll be with Bernie in just a few moments after these short messages. Stay right where you are. Right in our area, we are fortunate to have one of the top martial arts schools in the country, Personal Best Karate. Personal Best has been recognized for their community involvement, professional staff development, character building programs, and exciting educational curriculum. Personal Best stands at the top of their industry. 5 locations offering personalized professional instruction. Not sure if karate is right for you? At no obligation, the staff at Personal Best will guide you in a private introductory program to see if karate is indeed the right fit to help you achieve your goals and meet your needs. What does karate at Personal Best teach you? Character building, success habits, helps you get in shape, relieve stress, self-control, setting goals, and, of course, self-defense. Personal Best's goal is to create successful, contributing members of society through the practice of the martial arts at Personal Best. Mr. Chris Rappold is, of course, the founder of Personal Best Karate. He tells me his greatest joy of all is to see the personal transformation in each and every student. Bring out your best with Personal Best Karate. Telephone number 508-285-5425. That's 508-285-5425. Locations in Norton, Foxborough, Southeaston, Franklin, and Taunton. That's Personal Best Karate.
Acupuncture, yoga, integrative medicine, stress reduction, transcendental healing.
Imagine dozens of workshops, many offering continuing education credits, all conducted by the finest practitioners and educators, and yours to try for a fraction of what you'd pay privately. For 2 days only, March 8th and 9th, you'll find all these workshops in one place. The Cape and Islands Wellness Expo at the Resort and Conference Center in the West End Rotary, Hyannis, across from the Melody Tent. Presented by your friends at Cape Healing Arts Magazine and sponsored by Cape Cod Healthcare and Cape Cod Community College. The workshops, best-selling author and keynote speaker Dr. Bernie Siegel, live performances, 100 exhibitors focused on health, wellness, and sustainability. Door prizes worth thousands of dollars. Whoa, there's too much to fit in this little message, but you can get the full scope of this amazing weekend by going online to capeexpo.com. You can remember that, capeexpo.com.
Alrighty, welcome back. And as promised, we have Dr. Bernie Siegel on the program this evening. And Bernie, you out there?
Yes, I'm. Well, you know, when people say, "Are you here?" I say, "No, I'm not all there." That's why I'm here.
Well, it's great to have you on again. You've been a great long-term friend here for the Natural Health and Healing Show, and I know we've got a great event coming up at the Cape and Islands Wellness Expo, and a lot of folks out there, I'm sure, are noting that date and giving calls and checking in on things. But you're going to talk about some recent research on the effects of loneliness and stress.
I mean, I talk about a lot of things, but what's interesting, remember, I started this back 30 years ago, working with cancer patients in support groups, and talking, you know, and in my first book, the question, what happened last 2 years, you know, in your life? And what I got was, oh, you're telling the patient it's their fault, you'll make them feel guilty, you're blaming them, and I was on all the famous talk shows with everybody yelling at me. And here you are 30 years later with, you know, research showing that if you are lonely, and the definition was, it didn't matter if you were living in a house with 10 people. You know, it had to do with your feelings of loneliness, not how big a family you had or how many relatives, that it affected your immune function, the genes that affected immune function. So you were more likely to have an autoimmune disease. In other words, it could become hyperactive or inactive and develop viral illnesses and cancer. And so here we are 30 years later saying, oh, so it's important to ask somebody. Yes.
No question about it. Yeah. I was just recently reading on the heartmath.org site, and in HeartMath research now we're learning that 5 seconds of a negative emotion equals up to 6 hours of immunosuppression.
Wow.
And how quickly it turned around. The opposite effect is such that it turns around in less than 2 seconds by thinking of a cherished memory, for example. Yeah. So the mind and the heart are one, no question about it.
Yeah, and the heart has memories. You know, that's the other thing. I mean, I always say to people, your life is stored in your body. And the two ways I know that, one is the body can speak through drawings and dreams. I mean, literally show anatomy when a patient is drawing a picture, and they don't know what they're drawing, but I look at it and you make a diagnosis from it. And the other is, of course, with heart and lung transplants, when people wake up with memories of the person whose heart, you know, has been put into them. And these stories are very well documented. I mean, we're not making this up. So, well, way back when at Johns Hopkins, Caroline Thomas, a psychiatrist there, had all the medical students fill out a personality profile and draw a picture of themselves. And then she looked them up several decades later when they're out in the world, you know, adults practicing medicine. And she thought that it would have, first of all, personality would have nothing to do with cancer, but she was quite surprised, quote, to see a low closeness to parent profile, you were more likely to develop cancer. And the patients who were likely to develop heart disease drew themselves with their arms wide open, you know, like their heart is vulnerable.
Right.
And anybody can come to them and take from them. And the healthy position with your hands at your sides. But when I talked to her on the phone years ago, she said, oh, I could tell what they were going to get and where they were going to get it. And that's a pretty powerful statement.
Wow, that sure is.
And even longer ago than that, and again, what disappoints me is no medical students are told this, that Carl Jung listened to a dream and made a diagnosis of a brain tumor. And basically what the dream was about this milky pond that was dammed up and obstructed. And he saw that as cerebrospinal fluid and that the man had a brain tumor at the base of his brain. And, you know, just listening to the dream, and his diagnosis was correct. I have to say, a lot of doctors wouldn't be smart enough to make that diagnosis. But it's still, you know, again, the body's speaking, and it's not this inert thing. I mean, there's a wonderful poem I put in another one of my books that by John Updike. He said, a scab is a beautiful thing, a coin the body has minted, but an invisible motto, in God we trust. And, you know, he goes on to say our body loves us. And it does. But when we don't love our lives, look at good old Monday morning. I always say, if the president wants to save money, cancel Monday. You know, but obviously Tuesday we're going to have a problem.
Absolutely.
And I never seem to stop telling stories. Let me tell one more study.
We love your stories.
It was done in Australia. You have a heart attack, you know what you were just talking about. Go home to a house with a dog. You have a heart attack, go home to a house without a dog. What do you think happens? 12 months later, if there was a dog in the house, 5% of the people had died. If there was no dog in the house, 26% of the people had died.
Wow.
And what people... Oh, and the comedy was this doctor in Australia said, if we just had everybody get a dog, we'd save $145 million a year in medical expenses.
And a lot of lives.
Yeah, but the key is people have to remember, you pet a dog, your oxytocin and serotonin levels go up. Mm-hmm. So you bond with people, you develop relationships, and that's what keeps us alive. You know, women, when we get scientific, see, I'm reading an article about malignant melanoma, and it discusses how women with the same site and depth cancer live longer than men. And this oncologist went on to say in the article that somehow female hormones must be protecting the women. He can't understand how, but it must be. And I said, excuse me, married men live longer than single men with the same cancer, smoke as much as a single man, and have less lung cancer. So what's your conclusion? Sleeping with estrogen and progesterone must protect you. And, you know, that's when we forget and that relationships and connections are scientific, too.
Right.
You know, you have meaning in your life. You have a different body chemistry. And I might say, last but not least, what you were talking about reversing, two things. One is if you put performers on a stage, put them in a tragedy, and this has been done, and we draw their blood, their immune function goes down and cortisol levels go up. Put them in a comedy, and the opposite happens. Immune function increases, cortisol levels drop. And that's one of the things I've learned, that laughter is such an incredible therapy. When you laugh, you know, you can't be afraid, you can't worry. It just doesn't work. I mean, your brain won't let you when you're laughing. And again, study American Psychosomatic Association. Cancer patients who laughed lived longer than those who didn't. And their comment was, it didn't even have to be something funny if they just laughed. And I always tell this to people, just start laughing, watch how you feel in a few minutes, and watch what happens to the people around you. You know, they start chuckling, too. Even though nothing has happened, you just burst out laughing.
Well, it's like a lot of the Richard Davidson work, the neuroplasticity work out at the University of Wisconsin. I think that, you know, that research clearly indicates that when they hooked up 256 electrodes to the monks, to the Buddhist monks, and they found out that they were meditating on compassion, they found that their brains went into these incredible gamma burst brainwave states like they've never seen before.
Yep.
And these positive emotions, I always tell my patients, whether you believe yourself or not, just continue to say positive things to yourself.
Right.
It's really essential to program positive emotion.
Yeah, what I find, and it struck me one day, I have to take a step back. I was walking our dogs, and water impressed me. You know, we listen to the ocean, we listen to streams, and we relax. And we never stop to think that this stream is slamming into rocks, banging against, you know, a solid shore, and it's not complaining. And also the many forms that water comes in. So I ended up writing a poem because of suddenly seeing this line in the Bible. Nicodemus comes to Jesus, says, how can I be born again? I'm a grown man, I can't fit in my mother's womb. And Jesus says, we're water and spirit. And I thought, where is that coming from? I mean, why not earth? You know, what was Adam made out of? But I thought, you know, maybe he's trying to tell him something. That, yes, we are spirit, but the water, and we are a large part water, but that you can change. Water has all these options. It can be destructive, but it can also rise above, freeze up to protect, you know, become snow and create a blank canvas. So I think we really, if we are born again, my feeling is that's when we make genetic changes and so-called incurable diseases literally disappear. And Solzhenitsyn, in his book Cancer Ward, he really, again, hit me with his words. See, as doctors, you get well when you're not supposed to. We say, oh, you had a spontaneous remission or an error in diagnosis. You know, well, a spontaneous remission, if your neighbor has one, it's spontaneous. There's no point in talking it over. But if you... What Solzhenitsyn said was, the men are sitting on the ward. One of them opens his book and says, oh, look, there are cases of recovery not through treatment, but self-induced healing. And then his symbolism it flutters out of the book like a rainbow-colored butterfly. And I thought, the guy, Solzhenitsyn had cancer. He's coming from a deep truth within him, self-induced healing. And the butterfly, symbol of transformation, the rainbow, every color represents an emotion. In other words, when people draw a picture with crayons, the colors they pick speak to me too. And here it is in total order. So I'm always saying to people a little bit about what you were saying before, why people need coffee or can't get going and energy.
Right.
Live your chocolate ice cream. Ask people what they would do if they had 15 minutes to live. And my hope is they will tell you their chocolate ice cream. In other words, what they would love to do. And if they start doing that, knowing that they're mortal and here for a limited time, then some incredible healing can occur in their physical bodies, which suddenly realize, oh, you're enjoying life, so let me stay here as long as we can. See, you used the term limited heartbeats. I've worked with the angel of death, and in heaven there's an enormous room filled with candles that was shown to me. And he said, every candle is somebody's life. So you said it in heartbeats.
Wow.
It's represented by candles. And I said, oh, the tall ones are kids and the little ones old people? He said, no. Some of the tall ones are old people and the little ones are kids. It's not about their age. And what you were saying, too, is burn up, folks. Don't burn out. Live your life.
Right.
Enjoy it. Don't wait for a disaster to wake you up. Can't tell you how many people, when cancer becomes a blessing, it's not that they're happy to have it, but it teaches them about life. I was just watching some television program where people are almost killed in accidents. And the guy said when the plane he was on landed, he and his wife, and it burst into flame, and they could have all died. He said, I don't worry about the balance in my checking account anymore. But you see, if you're brought up and educated, then you don't wait for a disaster to strengthen you.
Bernie, say hello to Catherine Foley.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Bernie. How are you? I was just sitting here. I'm like, oh my God, you're so fantastic. I love you.
It's I've been in therapy for 30 years. Doing these groups, and the way I put it is I try to live discernment. Yeah. Life is difficult. Another of my favorite questions is to say to an audience, is life fair? Of course, everybody yells, no. I say, it must be. You're all complaining. Then they laugh. Life is difficult. And if we can help people be prepared for the difficulties, then we're doing something. And I have to agree with all the things that you've said, that Steve Sinatra does and that I've done with ourselves and our family and seen it. It was interesting. A few months ago, I was having, when I lay down in bed at night, some ectopic beats. And, I had all the tests, and, there's nothing terrible. And when I exercised, I had no problem. And I have a very slow pulse because I exercise a lot, so my cardiologist was saying it probably has to do with that. But as soon as I started taking some D-ribose, it stopped totally.
Oh, yeah.
So I called the cardiologist, and said, hey, just so you know, when the next patient comes in, tell them, take it.
Yeah.
Because, I was taking and doing things that Steve talks about. And I find by using my family and myself, if something works, I know it's effective, if you know what I mean. It's not a placebo and I'm talking them into something.
Right.
We use ourselves as experiments
of course.
And see what happens. Yeah.
Bernie, we're going to take a short little break, and those of you who've enjoyed the first few moments, I hope you can stick around, Bernie. Can you do that?
Oh, yes.
We'll be right back here, folks.
Hi, this is Catherine from Jarrow Formulas. We're happy to announce our new partnership with Dr. Mark Mincola. When we started out in this industry, our intentions were to bring good quality nutrition, cutting-edge science, and reasonably priced products to the market, and also encourage people to take an active role in their own health and wellness. Jarrow Formulas has been in business for over 20 years and is considered an industry leader. Jarrow is incredibly active in consumers' rights to access dietary supplements and creating good quality manufacturing standards for our industry. When we first met Dr. Mincola, we knew that we had a true partner and an ally in the mission of creating a happy, healthy, and wealthy New England through the sharing of knowledge and enthusiasm for health and healing. And we're excited for the world of knowledge that there is that we can share with you all. As we take this journey together with great partners, great energy, and looking forward to a great future for all of those that are encouraged to come along.
Attention home-related businesses. The 2008 Home and Garden Show presented by Balbone's Landscape Supply will be at the Independence Mall in Kingston, April 4th through the 6th. This is the largest show of its kind on the South Shore. With your booth, you'll reach thousands of potential customers and additional mall traffic at this one-of-a-kind event. This year's show will focus on beautifying and simplifying the inside and outside of your home with a Going Green theme. Don't miss this extraordinary opportunity to display your business. The 2008 Home and Garden Show presented by Balbone's Landscape Supply, Taylor Rental, Real Estate Options 153, Countrywide Mortgage, Bellegarde, Shiretown Glass, Community Newspapers, and 95.9 WATD. For more information on the Home and Garden Show 2008 at the Independence Mall, April 4th through the 6th, please visit cmrevents.com. That's cmrevents.com.
Welcome back in here. Of course, March 8th and 9th, that would be this coming Saturday from 10 to 6 and Sunday from 12 to 4. The Cape and Islands Wellness Expo at the Resort and Conference Center in Hyannis. If you register now for workshops, receive almost 40% off. $10 ticket, $8 pre-purchased online tickets. More than 100 exhibitors, 30 workshops, and thousands of dollars worth of door prizes. And that's, again, Cape and Islands Wellness Expo. And, of course, the keynote speaker, our guest this evening, Dr. Bernie Siegel. Bernie, it's so good to have you here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And, one of the things that Catherine and I were chatting about is this idea that when you go into this remarkable heartmath.org site, you can actually see, they've actually found that the brain has what they call, or the heart rather, has what they call a little brain. Yes. And it produces somatocells, the same cells that are produced in the brainstem and in the brain. And they're finding now that there's constant dialogue back and forth between the brain and the heart, so that whenever we experience emotions that are very powerfully positive or powerfully negative, there's a direct corollary with heart rate variability and virtually all our health functions.
Yeah, all the cells of the body have the same components as brain cells. I mean, obviously, the percentage, you might say, of certain components can vary, so that the other cells, as I say, are capable of memory and communication also. Obviously, we couldn't survive if, our body couldn't communicate. And I don't know if you've had him on your program, but Bruce Lipton in his book, Biology of Belief, as he says, and I've always said for years, I mean, I used to talk about genes like a light switch, who turns it on. He uses the term a blueprint. Who decides on the blueprint. And so it's the environment, the way we started my discussion about lonesomeness and affecting genes. So your mood, emotions, feelings, your internal environment becomes your body chemistry. And that affects genes. So twins, identical twins don't get the same disease the same week. And it has so much to do with personality. I mean, with something like breast cancer, ask any audience, and it's true statistically, that I always say, if I have twin sisters, one is a little devil, and the other one's a sweet little girl who internalizes anger and keeps mommy and daddy happy, who's more likely to get breast cancer? And everybody answers the good girl. And it's true. So, again, if you internalize feelings, how are you? Fine. What's wrong? Nothing. And you're going through hell, your body is going to break down because you're denying its needs and feelings. And a lawyer put it, I always say being a lawyer is a serious illness. Because he said it so beautifully. In the midst of a crisis, which I won't get into, he was left to make a crazy decision. And he said, I came to a conclusion that was eminently reasonable, totally logical, and completely wrong. because while learning to think, I almost forgot how to feel. You see, he realized he's all in his head, and he needs to be with the people whose lives are, being threatened, and not worrying about where you park cars or, mechanical things, but be with the people. And that's what most of us don't get into, our feelings.
It really is the nurture. I mean, I recently saw the family dinner study from the University of Minnesota, and it suggested that those children who dine with their families have an 80 to 90% lower risk rate of having substance abuse problems when they grow up.
Right.
And it's because they're having their questions answered. Somebody takes the time to ask them how their day was. It makes a huge difference to make that heartfelt connection.
Addictions are a search for what these children never felt in a healthy, normal way. And a study done at Harvard. You ask students, do your parents love you? And irregardless of other factors, like my father's a murderer, he smokes, did they love you? The kids who answered yes, 35 years later, 1 out of 4 had suffered a major illness. Those who said no, over 90% had.
Wow.
Incredible.
And that's why, you see, you can have a program filled with wonderful information. Does that help anybody? Not if they don't have inspiration, self-worth, and esteem and love.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm out there trying to inspire people. When they come up to me and say, why don't you tell me what to eat? I said, just go to the bookstore. There'll be a lot of books that tell you what to eat. I need to get you interested in going and reading the book rather than just give a lot of facts out to people. And not my latest, I keep writing books, but it's called Love, Magic, and Mud Pies, and it's about parenting, because I realized what an incredible force, in a sense, that is in a person's life. Either self-destructive, to quote one lady, my mother's words were eating away at me and maybe gave me cancer. Why? Because you're a failure, you embarrass us, we will only dress you in dark colors. She had to get cancer to buy a red dress in her, later in her life. And I think that's the part people need to understand. And even the violence that we're seeing, at Virginia Tech and in Illinois, in East of Eden, John Steinbeck, I came across a paragraph. He said, what everyone is fearful of is rejection. I may even have it here to quote him. Yeah, let me quote him exactly. He said, the greatest terror a child can have is that he is not loved, and rejection is the hell he fears. I think everyone in the world, to a large or small extent, has felt rejection. Of rejection comes anger, and with anger some kind of crime, and revenge for the rejection, and with the crime guilt, and there is the story of mankind.
Wow.
Boy, when I read that after, all the headlines we're reading, and so, yes, I wrote a book hoping every kid would grow up with kindness and love, and what a difference it will make the world. And one more fact, something that Bruce Lipton mentions too, that up to the age of 6, because you were talking about how your brain is affected, brainwave patterns, up to the age of 6, a child's brainwave pattern is similar to that of someone under hypnosis. So you really have to understand that what a parent says to you for the first 6 years is hypnotic. And I saw that as a pediatric surgeon. I'd get, little kids in to operate on, and I would tell them something, and, like you'll go to sleep when you go in the operating room. I had kids fall asleep just being wheeled into the room, see, because he said, I'll go to sleep here. And I realized how powerful my words are, so I would use alcohol sponges to anesthetize their skin. In other words, I would lie to the kids. I would say, I'm going to rub your skin with this little pad, and it'll get numb and you won't feel the needle. And the kids would look up and say, why don't the other doctors use that? And that's at least 30% of them would have total anesthesia. And another, would say, no, it didn't work, or, but it always hurt them less than, when nobody ever suggested that. And again, another study, before surgery, you do 15 minutes of guided imagery with a patient, about a successful outcome and what's going to happen. And with the control group, 15 minutes, what would you like to talk about? The individuals who did the guided imagery needed less anesthesia, surgery went faster, and on and on. And again, these are things I would call crazy for doing in the operating room and, communicating with patients, even talking to them under anesthesia. because we forget that you hear in coma, asleep, obviously, and when you're anesthetized. And so those messages become very important that people hear.
And regarding the title of your book, Love, Magic, and Mud Pies, now we're kind of touching on the magic, are we not?
Yeah, well, I'm sure the publishers, I would have called it probably prescriptions for parenting, but I think they wanted to play on the love, medicine, and miracles, but the magic are really practical things. In other words, each time I discuss a topic, it's how do you make the magic?
Right.
And to me, the mud pie is, again, how you parent a child. You can sling the mud around, or you can build a castle out of it. So when I would say at workshops, what mottos are you living by, because of what my parents were like, a man raised his hand and said, "Excuse me, you didn't ask us what mottos we're dying by." And I always say I came from a minority group. My parents loved me, I did well in school, and I get along with God. So I didn't understand the pain and troubles that other people are experiencing. And in religions, too, the guilt, the shame, the blame, all the authority figures, school teachers, you can rebirth a child. You can become their parent and make them feel worthy, or you can add to their woes by making them feel inadequate, in all these places. You're great in school, the drawing you did, and, if they're always feeling, I failed, then they're afraid to live.
Bernie, if there's someone out there in the audience that kind of resonates and really kind of gets what we're saying here regarding the magic of the mind and positive emotion, etc., but they're sort of bound up and they're just not able to quite break away from the binding, what do you say to inspire that person?
I say every day you get up and say WWLD. What would Lassie do? And then you live. See, with a role model. But what I mean is you rehearse and practice, that you don't judge yourself.
Right.
You think of yourself as a blank canvas, that you're a work of art, a work in progress, and you keep working at it. And actually criticism. See, what you need to find, like what you're doing with your program, you need to find coaches. So people need to understand that if you're criticized, that's a positive statement. People know you care, are willing to change, and tell you when you do something wrong or you're not living up to your goal. If you're never criticized, then that means all you do is make excuses, so people stop talking to you and telling you when you make a mess out of something. And I mean this, whether you're a plumber or a doctor, if you're never criticized, people have given up on you. Because they know you come up with an excuse. You're a bad patient, your pipes are a problem, it's not me. So look for coaching. Call it feedback if you don't like the word criticism. But, think of yourself as a performer, as an athlete. You find a coach, and you go out there and rehearse and practice. If people are inspired, they will achieve what they want. That's the thing I look for in people. Because they'll often project it on me. They say, oh, this program was so inspiring. If it weren't in you, the program wouldn't be inspiring. Right. So I loved that movie, and somebody else comes out and says, I hated that movie. It's what's in the person. And I look for people who've got the inspiration. Then I know if I work with them, something significant will happen.
Well, I think that inspiration sort of inspires people out of a self-contempt of sorts in a lot of ways.
Well, that's why I say you have to reparent yourself. And we can be, literally, this came from a suicidal young lady who changed her mind and said to me, you're my CD. I said, what do you mean I'm a CD? She said, you're my chosen dad. So I have a lot of, not legally adopted children, but a lot that I just call myself their B-dad, B for Bernie, B-dad.
Wow.
And yes, and we relate to each other. You see, I have stood up in front of 1,200 high school students and said, I love you. If you need a father, I will be your father. Here's my phone number, and here's my email address. What I've learned is, you'd say, what are you, out of your mind? 500 kids? I said, no. What I've learned is, if you tell them you love them, they get the message. They go home feeling better. And at this school, I had 3 kids get in touch with me, who were really troubled. But the others go home saying, you hear what that guy said? He loves us. And that's enough to make a difference.
Sure, it is.
To help them with their self-esteem and self-worth.
Every bit of positive energy you put out there makes a difference.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about exceptional cancer patients.
Well, what I learned, again, 30 years ago, after sending out a letter to 100 people with cancer from our office, okay, it's not coming from a stranger, saying if you want to live a longer and better life, come to a meeting. We'll talk about our lives, our feelings. I expected 200, 300, 400 people to show up because it didn't say you couldn't bring friends and relatives with cancer. And less than a dozen women appeared. And that's when I realized I don't know the people I'm taking care of.
Wow.
I'm trying to save their lives, and they don't even want to come to a meeting.
Wow.
And again, it had to do with, well, I don't want to talk about my feelings. You might ask me to draw a picture. I'm not an artist. You want me to read a book. I don't have time for a book. And it was just incredible to me how many people, literally some said, no, I'm trying to die. I'm not going to a meeting to extend my life.
Wow.
But they were not afraid now to talk to me. You know what I mean? That I was not judging them. But what I learned was there's a personality, what I call a survivor personality. So there are people who exceed expectations, do better than statistics. And psychiatrist George Solomon, a few years ago, called it immune competent personality. When AIDS first came out and there wasn't much he could do, he was seeing the difference in how some individuals with AIDS did very well. I've seen people go from HIV positive to HIV negative with no treatment. What did they do? Yeah, they changed their lives. Matter of fact, I have this sign hanging on my wall because it came from somebody who had that change. He said, when you live in your heart, magic happens.
Wow.
Yeah, what you've been talking about. But to quickly go through some of the questions, do you have a sense of meaning in your life? Are you able to ask friends and family for help when you need them? Can you express anger appropriately in defense of yourself? Can you say no to someone when they ask you to do a favor you don't want to do? Do you make the choices about your treatment versus somebody else just prescribing?
Yeah.
If you have emotions that are distressing, do you use them? My way of saying is, if you're hungry, you don't get upset, you nourish yourself. So if you don't like how you're feeling, will you go and nourish your life rather than get more depressed because you're feeling depressed?
Well, Bernie, that to that point, now when a lot of people feel like that, they're, instead of nourishing the emotion or recognizing the emotion, they're prescribed an antidepressant or, and a very good and dear friend of mine, we were talking about it, and she said, when you take something like that, where does the sadness go?
Right. It's be distracted or get numb rather than deal with it. But when you deal with it, that's part of what I call the labor pain of life.
Yeah.
That life is a labor pain, and you have to keep beginning and rebirthing and bringing play into your life. The healthiest thing I've learned is when you don't know what time it is. In other words, when you lose track of time doing something, I think that is the healthiest state you can be in. You're in a real trance state. And I've seen this operating on people, painting portraits, which I do. In other words, I can be in pain and stand at the operating table for 6 hours and never feel my body until the surgery is over. And that amazed me. That, again, about our bodies and our minds and how powerful all these things are. And last but not least, that you're not living a role. So, I can't work, what's the point of living? The kids left home, so what am I going to do? That people need to have their authentic lives.
I remember years ago Bradshaw coined the term human being, not human doing.
Right. Yeah. I use that expression all the time.
It's a wonderful term. We're going to take a short little break, and we'll be right back with Dr. Bernie Siegel. Stay tuned. This segment is being sponsored by Good Health Natural Foods. Good Health is a well-established organic specialty food market as well as a vitamin and sports nutrition shop. Good Health is a family-owned business passionately committed to giving back to the neighborhoods of Boston and the South Shore. The Maturos and the entire Good Health family continue to make an indelible impact on the communities they serve. There are currently 2 extraordinary stores, 1627 Hancock Street, Quincy, Mass., and 219 Columbia Road, Route 53 in Hanover, Mass. For everything natural, organic, and wheat or gluten-free, it's Good Health Natural Foods, open 7 days a week. In Quincy, 617-773-4925. In Hanover, 781-826-0808. That's Good Health Natural Foods.
Hi, this is Catherine from Jarrow Formulas. We're happy to announce our new partnership with Dr. Mark Mincola. When we started out in this industry, our intentions were to bring good quality nutrition, cutting-edge science, and reasonably priced products to the market, and also encourage people to take an active role in their own health and wellness. Jarrow Formulas has been in business for over 20 years and is considered an industry leader. Jarrow is incredibly active in consumers' rights to access dietary supplements and creating good quality manufacturing standards for our industry. When we first met Dr. Mincola, we knew that we had a true partner and an ally in the mission of creating a happy, healthy, and wealthy New England through the sharing of knowledge and enthusiasm for health and healing. And we're excited for the world of knowledge that there is that we can share with you all. As we take this journey together with great partners, great energy, and looking forward to a great future for all of those that are encouraged to come along.
Alrighty, welcome back in, of course. Once again, Cape and Islands Wellness Expo this coming Saturday, March 8th from 10 to 6. Sunday, March 9th from 12 to 4. Keynote speaker, Bernie Siegel. And he's been with us this evening. In case you missed it, you missed a very special program. Bernie, one thing that came to my mind during that last break, when I was listening to you, I just made some notes. I remember an old Hippocrates quote, "It's more important to know what kind of patient has a disease than what kind of disease a patient has."
Right. Yeah, and, today we are so involved with technology, which, I'm not downplaying. I mean, I know people who are alive today with somebody else's heart in them. That's wonderful. But, it's still the person and their experience that becomes important. Back in 1926, Alida Evans wrote a book called The Psychological Study of Cancer. And she used the term, cancer is growth gone wrong in the person's life, a message to take a new direction. Now, today, you'd be yelled at for saying that. But in those days, they didn't have any fancy treatments, and they knew the patients and knew that things had happened in their life that led them to be sick at that time. So I think that's the important part for doctors today, too, to ask people, what's going on in your life? See, what are you experiencing? Not what's wrong. What's your chief complaint? Is how medical history starts. I always said to people, how may I help you? Rather than, what's wrong with you? And it gave them a different opportunity and a way to speak to me. And something else that I would suggest to everybody listening, no matter what affliction you may have, from migraine headache to cancer to a heart attack, always say to yourself, what's it like to experience this illness, this problem? If I had to tell people what I'm going through, what words would I use? And the words that pop out of you are about your life. So when people say failure, roadblock, pressure, burden, it goes on. And some say curse and some say blessing. But what they're talking about is their life. When you say, well, how does failure fit your life? Oh, my parents committed suicide when I was a kid. I must have been a failure as a child. When you have a urinary infection and the woman said, oh, it's very draining. Then she looked at me and said, oh, thank you. I mean, I didn't even get a chance to ask, because it's like her eyes lit up and it was like, oh, I know what's happening in my life. Or a woman with a migraine headache, it was going to be a minute at the hospital, said it's like a burden, a lot of pressure. And I talked to her about it. Turned out it was her marriage. And 15 minutes later, she got up off the stretcher and said, I'm going home. My headache's gone. So those are the things you see happening. And I always do it in my own life. If something comes up, I question. So it'll help me to rearrange my life and, feel better.
Bernie, we talked real briefly for a moment or two about reparenting yourself. Well, what are the keys to reparenting oneself?
Well, you have to, in a sense, abandon your past. That word has always helped me. I mean, you have to let go of your past experience. And by reparenting, it can literally be putting your baby pictures around the house and loving the child. Back when AIDS came out, somebody wrote a song, I love myself the way I am. There's nothing I need to change. I'll always be the perfect me. There's nothing to rearrange. And it goes on. And I think that it's beginning to accept that, let go of the unhealthy messages, and literally recreate yourself by being the parent that you may never had, you know. And I always say the reason we're called grandparents and great-grandparents is because we're a lot more loving and a lot less judgmental, and so we are great and grand, you know, as far as the kids are concerned. And it's about our change and the way we see that child. So I would say, again, be like your own grandparent and love yourself. Now, that doesn't mean you have to like yourself. It's love yourself. Don't blame. It's not yelling, there's something wrong with you. It's, I don't like what you did, you know, that type of thing. So let's change our behavior tomorrow. I was literally born an ugly duckling. I mean, my mother was quite sick, wasn't supposed to get pregnant, all kinds of complications. So what my mother said she took home from the hospital was a purple melon, not a child.
Oh, boy.
That's a quote from her.
Wow.
And so they wrapped me in kerchiefs and hid me in a covered carriage so they wouldn't scare people and upset them. And so I didn't learn this till I was an adult, because if you look in the family album, seeing a covered carriage, you figure, you know, I'm asleep. But my mother, I said to my mother, then why am I not a drug addict or an alcoholic? And she said, her mother took me. Boom. And her mother literally, my mom said, poured oil all over my body and head and massaged and pushed everything back where it belonged 4, 5, and 6 times a day. See, again, studies, you massage an infant in the newborn nursery 4 times a day. Don't touch the kid in the next crib. Feed them the same amount, and the kid who's touched gains weight faster. And we know this with kittens and puppies, too. You know, if mommy licks you and loves you, you grow up faster. So, again, people have to understand your life is your chemistry, too. And it's all stored up in there. And my grandmother, in a sense, saved my life. And, you know, one more mystical occurrence that happened to me, which convinced me about body memories, when I was an adult, and I have a shaved head, I was being massaged by a woman for the first time. She put the oil on my head and rubbed it. I opened my eyes. The room's got 6 people in it. I said, what the hell's going on here? And they said, you left. We couldn't talk to you. We couldn't communicate. I thought you had a stroke or a heart attack. And I said, no. I went back to being an infant because a woman with oil touched my head like my grandmother did. And I mean, I know it was a wonderful moment for me, but the room was filled with, you know, these people in total panic until I opened my eyes a few minutes later and came back, you know, when she was done.
Incredible.
And to me, as I say, that convinces me, and energy healers and others and massage therapists know this. You touch certain parts of the body, and it brings up memories for people.
Sure, every nerve and muscle remember virtually everything. Well, they say the subconscious doesn't miss a doggone thing, so somewhere in there it's definitely recorded.
And the other, as Jung said, the future is unconsciously prepared long in advance, and therefore can be guessed by clairvoyance. And I think that's something people need to understand, that every decision you make every day is creating your future, and that's why you see it in drawings and hear about it in dreams.
Magnificent. Well, Bernie, it's been wonderful. And again, you'll be delivering the keynote address at the Cape and Islands Wellness Expo, and that'll be Saturday at 2 p.m. It's going to be at the Resort and Conference Center at Hyannis. Anybody interested, and you surely should be, you can call them at 508-896-7117. Or you can log on to capeexpo.com. Bernie Siegel, thank you so much.
Wow.
My pleasure.
And hope to have you on again and again and again.
Yeah.
You didn't say we're running out of time, which most people say, and I always say that's what we all need to understand. We're all going to run out of time. You're healthier than most interviewers.
God bless. Thanks so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. All right, once again, folks interested, I urge you to get down there and see Bernie at the Cape and Islands Wellness Expo, March 8th and 9th. And, of course, stay tuned for Tomorrow's Dreams with Bobby and Steve and the gang. And Catherine Foley, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And as always, you can actually log on to our website at www.maxhealing.com. One word, maxhealing.com. And you can view these radio broadcasts on podcasts. Until next Sunday, this is Mark Mincola reminding you all, please be wise, be aware, be well. Make it a healthy week. Good night.
Thank you for joining Mark Mincola for the Natural Health and Healing Show. Call Mark each Sunday evening at 8 o'clock for the latest nutritional news on 95.9 WATD.